Well, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, moderator for today's event, and I welcome you. We have a great event on tap. I'm especially interested in this particular topic, but before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the event, you will have the opportunity to access it later on. Following today's webinar, we will be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And we are taking questions from the audience. So if at any time during today's presentation you have a question for either of our speakers, please don't wait, don't hesitate. Just use the question and answer tab there on your interface and submit your question. We'll try to get to as many as we can near the end of today's webinar. We also have a very interactive public chat feature, so we encourage you to chat us your questions, comments, suggestions, whatever you feel like chatting over, and we'll be happy to chat you back. And also at the end of today's webinar, we are doing a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards, so please stick around. Hopefully you'll be one of our 4 lucky winners. All right, with that, let's go ahead and kick off today's webinar, which is Mainframes Underpin the Largest Organizations. Why aren't they part of your value streams? Our speakers today are Stuart Ashby, who is a DevOps evangelist at BMC CompuWare, and Jeffrey Keyes, who is the VP of Product at Platora. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. Great to see you both.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shai.
All right, well, Jeff, are you going to be kicking off the conversation?
I am. You know, this is a fun conversation for me. I really am excited to pull this together because we're going to highlight some things that I think are unspoken and just, you know, need to be talked about. So with that, we'll just kick right in.
Yeah, well, I'm going to take myself off camera, put myself on mute, and I'll see you guys near the end of the webinar, but I'll be on the back end if you need me for anything.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And Stuart, you've been in the mainframe world for quite some time. You know, this is what you live and breathe, and some of this is kind of fun. And you've been around long enough, like I have, where you've seen the world sort of change, but yet, things are moving forward. You've got a great background in the mainframe to come here today.
Yeah, and we've been automating stuff on the mainframe for a long time. So when DevOps came along and CI/CD pipelines were talked about, it wasn't that strange. But the exciting thing, I believe, with the DevOps tooling is that it's almost the last mile of automation where there were boundaries outside of the mainframe. They were always tricky to overcome, and now they aren't. You know, RESTful APIs really changed the whole IT landscape.
Love it. I love it. Well, today, flow for today, let's talk about a bit, the mindset of what's going wrong. Part of that getting into some of this, what has been termed, thanks to one of the analyst firms, bimodal IT, which is two-speed thinking, which is some very interesting aspects. And then introducing a new notion that is really moved forward the industry of value stream management and how it can help. And then talking a bit about how do you get from wherever you are now to a better future and some of the things you were just talking about. Mm-hmm. So kind of moving this forward, you know, hey, mainframe's a part of every key enterprise. What's the problem? What's going on here, Stuart?
Well, I think for a long time, there was that silo of the open systems and then the mainframe. It was seen as old, and yet, you know, the compute platform behind the mainframe is super modern, up to date. The programming languages get updated to take advantage of the hardware and optimization to make it run as fast as possible. I think typically that the people that have been in the mainframe are probably a little bit older. So perhaps there's a generational thing. People just thought that the DevOps couldn't be done on the mainframe. But the reality is, it's just another server in a data center, you know, the Z server. If you're a polyglot software engineer, COBOL's just another syntax, pretty easy to learn. And everything else is there, ready to go. Unit testing, code quality checking, the open borders toolchain that we're going to talk about through this really means that fractured ecosystem picture disappears and you have your infinity loop across your enterprise.
Yeah, that's kind of the point of moving forward, isn't it? Moving from this world where it's this old world, if you will, and nobody talks to them because they don't know how to talk to them. They use different terminology, different methodologies, and everything just feels different. As people look to modernize the mainframe, what are some of the options they have for going forward?
Well, you've listed them there. You can live with it, and the problem now in the modern world is that fast beats slow. It's not about big beating small anymore. Fast beats slow. So if you live with it, you're probably going to give competitors an advantage. You can re-platform, and that's good for the applications that are suitable for that. But when you've got complex dependencies, not so easy. And you could be putting some core logic that works very well in COBOL or a mainframe programming language into something that perhaps doesn't cope with it. So why not just embrace the fact that it is a compute platform in your enterprise, and do agile and be agile and do DevOps?
It's a really interesting aspect. I early on in my career, I had this impression like, you know what, all that mainframe stuff's just going to go away. The mini computer, who really needs that? The cool kid stuff is all in this world of, go create these new components and so forth. It still feels like there's that mentality there. Mainframes exist for a purpose, right?
They do. And I think how we kind of see it at BMC is that you've got your systems of engagement, so mobile or web, and then your system of record is the petabytes of data that have been built up over many, many years sitting on the mainframe. You want fast access to it to populate your system of engagement. So other than the TCP/IP interaction between them, they both are part of the value stream.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is oftentimes from an investment point of view, all these investments outside of living with it, an investment here doesn't come for free, and so having to trade off functionality and features, as we're talking about system engagement, most people focus on the system of engagement. And so the more that we can amp that up versus let me go just rebuild all this stuff here that no one's going to ever see, it feels like a tough investment call. So there's value if we can make that work better.
For sure. And the system of engagement can change your performance profile in the mainframe. Not so long ago, I came out of retail banking, and traditionally, what we used to see when we launched web applications for doing internet banking was that people would get onto it from their work computer at lunchtime, and then after maybe 6:30, 7 o'clock in the evening, they'd be doing some online banking. Then all of a sudden, when Wi-Fi got rolled out, I'm just north of London, when Wi-Fi got rolled out around the underground network and on buses and things, people were using that dead time of commuting to do their banking. So, from 07:30 to 9 o'clock was heavy. And then at any time in the evening, as people traveled home, they were getting on with it. So the whole thing changed from when customers were using the services, but your services are resilient and they can cope with it.
Yeah. Well, if only there was a way to sort of blur these two worlds together on a journey of modernizing. I know there's tools and techniques out there of how you take things forward.
That's why I started this conversation with Plutora. I'd heard that value stream management can help, but the big question was, what does it look to solve?
Well, that's exactly why I like this conversation. Value stream management's a brand new, the lean thinking is not a new concept. lean thinking has been around for a long time. Value stream management as a concept of the software world feels like it's new. Feels like it kicked off just a couple of years ago with a Forrester report that came out and created a wave and said, hey, I think there's something here. And what was fascinating is it looked to identify and target some key problems that are affecting every enterprise, because every enterprise struggles with some core issues. Really, they break down into these four buckets are really the around the visibility and the collaboration between teams. The first one being a fragmented visibility along an individual application delivery pipeline. Doesn't matter if it's mainframe or not, you still have fragmentation from what was then a PMO organization defining features and investments, the engineering and dev team defining and actually building out what was going on, handing off to various states of release and delivery, and then an operations team looking at the final result. All of these teams, of course, having different goals and things that they want to focus on. That fragmentation creates problems. I mean, even people were being incentivized around how well they did at defining the project scope to having operations getting incentivized on how much uptime there was. Oh my gosh, no wonder these teams had difficulty. It's in their best benefit in that kind of environment to segment their systems and their practices. Value stream management would say, well, wait a minute, why don't we look at this differently? Why don't we look at this as a value delivery of connecting all that together? Second core problem of value stream management looking to solve is the lack of visibility across the portfolio. If you can't see what's happening in one pipeline, good luck seeing what's happening at a portfolio level, meaning the dependencies, interconnecting the delivery styles, the technologies that are there. No two teams are using the same technologies. Even if they are, let's say you got teams all in Jira, they're certainly not using the same statuses, the same priorities. And how do you match all that together? Value stream management looks to target that. The third main problem, go ahead, Stuart.
No, I was just going to say, especially when companies have made acquisitions, having just come from CompuWare as a standalone company into BMC, that there's lots of differences in what was used internally. So that's been very common certainly in the banking world or finance generally, hasn't it? That people have grown through acquisition, and these different delivery pipelines have become part of the norm.
Absolutely. And once you hit the utopia, well, that's great. That means you're now successful and you'll probably acquire another company. And then you're right back to where you started again. So it's like you never get there. The third main problem is the difference of methodologies. And this is kind of where we were starting to talk about with the mainframe world, of these two different worlds. In reality, there's not just two different worlds. Everyone's on a journey of modernization. One team might be pretty far along on their journey of automation, DevOps adoption, agile. Another team, while they're still on that journey, won't be as far, and that's okay. Another team might still be way back in the waterfall way, and that might be best. That's okay. Whatever works best for each team, that's the point. Well, if you don't have visibility and transparency and automatic capture of data and correlation that normalizes the data across all these, you certainly don't have any way of creating a system of continuous improvement where you can measure your progress down a journey. This is what value stream management looks to solve. So it's cool.
Yeah, and something you just mentioned there about things not moving. You get legislation come along, and all of a sudden, in the UK, our central bank has asked financial institutions to be ready for potentially 0% interest rates or negative interest rates. Some of these modules haven't been touched for maybe since the turn of the century for the Y2K issue, and so over 21 years, a lot of knowledge may have retired, or possibly just forgotten what they did. So even if it isn't moving today, there's nothing to say that it won't need an overhaul or some kind of adaptation in the in the near future. So at a high level, what is value stream management then, Jeff?
Well, that's a great question. The value stream management is basically a set of tools, practices, and culture around looking at software delivery as a system of tools, and having a control. Basically breaking it down into 3 layers from a tooling perspective, so that you can do the right things with it. First, the ability to actually take data from across the development pipeline and incorporate it and normalize it. That way, every Jira project, I don't care what kind of statuses and priorities you're using, normalize them. Every product and project team, standardize it so that you can have a common view across it. The release and release trains, normalize what those look like and bring them all together. And then add on top of that a control plane, something where you can model the delivery pipelines in a way that's generic. And have your different phases of delivery, model the environments, model the cutover, model the planning, and all the rest that goes into these things, so that as you feed the data in, the control plane then can have some workflow and orchestration to add governance to the process. And then finally, value stream management as a solution brings in the metrics. So the dashboards, the visualizations, and gives a way to basically make data-driven decisions, turn data into insights into actions, and incorporate that back into the workflow and the control that's happening, so that it's a closed loop system. I think the value here really is as people start to make investments, to use make business decisions to ensure that an initiative is tracking with the right kind of investment that ought to be done. That way, people don't just wholesale decide, what, I'm struggling with my mainframe. We should just put all that in the cloud, but also be able to justify the investment of modernizing the mainframe practices, because like we've been talking about, we can move forward with mainframes. I didn't know how cool all that was until I was digging in, and I'm really glad we've been having these conversations about what is possible.
Yeah, and we've got customers that are saying that they need data because they can no longer go on gut feel of a subject matter expert who knows something or has done something for a long time, and they've always made their decisions on that intuition or whatever, that it needs to be actionable data.
Well, and I'm confident in your journeys as you help people modernize. They say if you can't measure it, you can't manage it, and if you can't manage it, you can't improve it. I'll quote Helen, who said, "Yeah, I think you can improve it, but how would anybody know if you don't have any measurement?" I'm sure that you run into justification cases where you're trying to help people understand the value of making these DevOps improvements to their mainframe pipelines.
Yeah, and I think that the measurement messaging is not perhaps as old as DevOps or the early adopters on the mainframe. But so for me, as an example, I was, someone was saying, "So what are we doing?" And it was like, well, we've got a Jenkins pipeline, and that was about as empirical as I got, for the feedback.
Right.
And the problem is that quite often the changes you make early, the low hanging fruit that you address when you're automating something, are the big savings. That's where you're probably going to make the biggest return on whatever investment you make. So having any kind of measurement in place early doors is got to be a good thing.
And kind of jumping off tangent here, but not really. You've seen people save big by making some of these process and tooling changes in the mainframe, haven't you?
Absolutely. That the unit testing, people introducing mainframe unit testing, has been a massive return on investment, because it really wasn't done, or it was done very manually. You needed a lot of knowledge to carry it out effectively. So using the the stuff that's available, and in a minute we're going to have a look at what a modern tool chain can look like. But getting the investment out of the stuff that's already deployed for the non-mainframe pipelines, and my earlier comment about RESTful API has really enabled that last mile of integrations. Reusing all of those tools and services to have a full end-to-end pipeline is making huge differences.
Well, since you brought it up, I mean, things I never knew existed, phrases like mainframe unit testing. I didn't know that existed. So talk about, what does a DevOps tool chain in a mainframe world look like? That, how is it different? How is it the same?
Well, I think that, we've got lots of icons there, but the big thing right now is that traditionally you'd have a mainframe source code management tool. And now organizations are saying, hang on a minute, we want to use our enterprise Git server for everything.
Sure.
Because once it's in version control, you can access it for as part of your automation pipelines. So we're seeing people saying, right, now we're going to use GitLab, GitHub, Bitbucket. And some of the language is changing that for anyone who's listening and uses the mainframe, they'll understand what a compile and a link edit and a bind is. But now we're just talking about build. You right click on a piece of source and you build it, and then you deploy it rather than making the language platform specific. Let's talk about use the same vocabulary to allow the people that are either trying to interact with the platform or learning the platform as early career engineers. They're going to be, their learning curve is reduced. And for the people that have been around for a while, it's easier to adopt new thinking when you understand why and how and what. And use familiar UIs, everyone's using the same thing. You don't have to worry that you've got to, alt and tab to an emulator or some kind of other thing that gets you into the mainframe. Use the same pipeline technology. Use the same code quality. Here, there's Sonar Cubes there because that's one of our technology partners. But it doesn't matter if there's code quality tools out there that understand COBOL. You can use those just as easily. At the IDE level, we were, when we started this journey 5 years ago, Eclipse was the IDE of choice, and we're now seeing the market evolving into Visual Studio Code and IntelliJ. Things don't stop. This isn't a fixed kind of environment. So people are now doing the same things, but with a different IDE. And then we get into, as I was saying, the deploy capabilities using Plutora and some of the other tools that are available. And in the environments side, we're seeing people starting to virtualize test environments. Sometimes they're spinning them up in containers that can be either on the mainframe or in the cloud. It's what the open systems have taught the mainframe people is this is the best practice. Why can't we do that on the mainframe? And we've kind of scratched their head and said, well, there's no reason why you can't do it on the mainframe. Let's create an open borders toolchain approach, simplifying the usability experience, the user experience, exposing the logs to that user experience rather than having to go and chase the logs down. The mainframe's just another server, and in your data center. I know I might have said that before, but it really is the mindset that is making people go faster.
Absolutely. And, interesting you bring that up. I mean, when you talk to that mindset, how do you help the folks on the mainframe teams, if you will, look to start adopting some of these tools and changing some of the practices?
We'll talk about it in a little while. What we did was we recognized that there were probably some fundamental common steps that the customers that BMC and CompuWare had interacted with had gone through. and we kind of neatly bundled it up into 10 steps. And the first one is define your outcome. Let's see where you want to go. And one of the things that we found very impactful was working with organizations to do value stream mapping, because it was the first time that perhaps people had ever seen the journey of code from idea there, top right, through to deployment, and then monitoring and measuring. And then that's what led me into looking at the whole value stream management. But it's amazing how these things are so interesting that you start looking at one thing, and then I know you've done with Helen Beale a series of webcasts recently on release management. And then you start to look at that, and it's So, Jeff, let me ask you, what is release management, and how does it help in this instance?
Well, that's a great question. we just happen to have
wow.
Wow. There's an ebook in the chat that I think is fantastic, because talking to the folks that manage the release delivery and releases through the whole process, that world also has to change. The old way of doing things that was done before, in a DevOps world, kind of goes away. And not that the same tasks aren't needed, but the way that they're done has to be different. So release management, what is it? It's changed over time. It used to be this thing of help people just deploy their code, and then it got to be, well, stop blowing up production with the crap that you just threw over the wall, and then it got to be, well, why don't you start looking at the risk profile of each thing, and then it got to be, well, let's start looking at some of the scope items that are coming in and make sure that those are done, and then, well, as long as you're doing all that, now you're a project guy worrying about the delivery. You've got the master calendar of all the releases coming in. Why don't you add some orchestration and puppeteering to that? Communicate with everyone. And by the way, keep risk and governance high, so that way we don't get sued or fined because we didn't follow, HIPAA or who knows whatever other regulatory compliance that's in place. Oh my gosh! And the saddest part about it is in most organizations, hate to say it, but it's kind of a thankless job. It's lots of hours and if you burn out, well, too bad. I'll get somebody else to do it. It's lacking an opportunity. It's ripe for an opportunity to figure out how to do it better, and that's kind of why we have helped this whole organization. That's where Plutora got its start. This release management organization to help coordinate software delivery. It's a close tie into what is value stream management. So,
yeah, and that's in my old organization, we had people that was always their job. They had their run books and Excel spreadsheets, and they modified it. But like anyone, they're going to win the lottery or retire or something else. And that knowledge would be a disaster if it goes out the door. And the other thing is, you get to a cab if they exist in organizations, and the question they would ask is, how many times have you deployed this before? Right. knowing that the answer is going to be never. But when you've got release management, you can potentially do this stuff multiple times.
I mean, the whole point there is from a release management standpoint is to have the governance and the right checks and balances in place so that you can make sure, push that left so the right things are happening before you get to a cab. I mean, why do cabs exist? Because we kept screwing stuff up.
Yeah, there's always that. I've been turned from an availability person into an SLI, SLO, the service level indicators and objectives, because you can spend a lot of money getting an extra 9 in your service level agreement, and is it really necessary? But I guess talking to you, I could ask, So what does a release management tool look like? Because that's what I want to know, as an interested party. What does it look like?
Absolutely, and like I said, this is where Platora got our start, was helping the manual release processes that go on. But if you think about what a release manager does in a traditional sense, in essence, as the world moves forward, their job becomes more distributed. They become more as coaches, and Platora as a tool helps them get there. So the first thing is they have to take data in from across the pipeline so they have visibility. In essence, there's project teams, project intake, product teams that are working together, test environments, all these different resources about that they're going to navigate with a never-ending influx of status requests. Where's this? Where's that? What's this done? What's the risk of project XYZ? Meanwhile, as a tool, looking to provide some fundamental things that can manage. What's the overall release schedule for the organization? That breaks down into release trains from various teams, including a platform team. Most commonly, for example, here's the Mainframe team. They've got these sets of deliverables that are come out on whatever time frame they come out. The coordination of that's where it's interesting, because that's where the projects and scope and the initiatives and how those all relate back together. So you can kind of coordinate then the scope with the calendar releases as it relates to the various applications, components, and have a connection between all that with the different environments that'll be needed when they get to IAT, UAT, and so forth, and bring these things together. Where it gets interesting is to be able to, in essence, templatize the release process, as you're talking about. Before you get to CAB, to know that I'm going to have certain things are going to be asked. Wouldn't it be cool if you had that all up front and templatized, so you could just hand that to every team and say, make sure you do the following? Better if it's automated. Then that just checks the box automatically. We can move it through much more quickly. If not, that's okay. We have manual checks that you can validate there too, and we can manage those activities. That's what Platora does. And so in essence, it takes the work of what a release manager would do by sitting in big meetings and going through each team. We had some teams that would have these, before they came to Platora, they would have these meetings with, no, kid you not, 50, 75 people in a room. Let's do the big war room to figure out what's going when. Oh my gosh, what a waste of time. That's what a modern release management tool will do today.
Yeah, but those big rooms of I've been in those rooms or on the massive conference calls, but it was all we knew. It was all we had. And I'm not talking about from the Mainframe perspective. I'm talking about from an organizational perspective, when you have to take things out of service because you're going to upgrade them. The WebSphere artifacts or the mobile bits and bobs. That's all we had. So this is where modernization, wrapping people, process, and tools together is pretty exciting as far as I'm concerned. That
it is. Imagine a world where a release management organization, for example, can do a couple things of saying, hey, look, we're going to have a release schedule that looks like this. We're not going to have anything go live over Christmas. As crazy as that sounds, teams have done it. Or for healthcare organizations, they shut down some of their delivery during a renewal period. Because why have a bunch of deployments at a point in time when the biggest load comes to the system, because people are renewing their current policies and so forth, and so they shut it down then. Or knowing that certain systems are going to go through a bigger transition, so need to let's block those systems out for a little bit and put them to the side while they have a chance to do a bigger project. Coordinating across initiatives. A release management organization, as they modernize, will recognize that their value is in templatizing and automating the rest of their work so that they can focus on creating data and being coaches to show teams where the inefficiencies are. A quick story from another healthcare provider was I found that they would set up a release schedule, and in that release schedule process would find that they would have teams that were trying to slide features in last minute. And oh, isn't this great? And they're like, well, just slide the release by a couple of days. We just really want to get this, one feature in instead of,
because they knew that the next time would be 3, 6, or 9 months away. We can't wait that long.
We can't wait, right? Well, and so what was funny is they found they started running some analytics on the impact or the risk of failure and how many incidences were produced by these late coming features, and found that, lo and behold, surprise, surprise, massive correlation, late features to incidences in production. And so much so, it's like, well, great, why don't we add more releases? Let's get some more release trains in there and then decouple that so we can keep our risk low, but yet still keep the system flowing. That's the kind of knowledge that's powerful.
And with culture change brings those sort of no change windows, that change restriction windows. You're talking about Black Friday, as a bank that has lots of credit card processing.
Right.
in it, Black Friday came out of culture, and all of a sudden you've got to watch for that, and Cyber Monday, and then the build up to Christmas in the UK, lots of people going and shopping. All of those times, that there would be a spike in demand, so you kind of avoid it. But what I would say now is that I think we're understanding the release concept, and then the next big thing that we're seeing is on the mainframe particularly is containerized mainframe images, so they can be spun up. So exactly, the next thing is how we're going to manage these environments, because on demand is grand, it's fantastic, but there must be coordination around these things, mustn't it?
Yeah, there's a new practice around test environment management. I mean, I think it's amazing that BMC has tooling that I can containerize and automate test environments and spin them up on demand. Recognizing that takes effort. That doesn't just snap my fingers. I got to do some coding work and some automation work to build all that up. Great. And once there, that's fantastic. And how do the question then comes to be, how do you coordinate between those environments which are manual, those which are automated, and those which are somewhere in between? And test environment management is the answer between all those. It acts as somewhat as the modernization glue, if you will. How do I bring all these things together? In order to do it, have to take a combination of, here's the release trains that are coming down the pipe and all the different requests, because I'm going to know what environments I need, and to be able to model all these environments so I know what applications are on them, what are the environment's capabilities, what data are needed. Again, back to, are there blockouts, are there systems that I got to pull offline for maintenance, and mix all that together into a system. That's test environment management. Some organizations have a formal group that manages these, but frankly, most don't. And it's sort of the Achilles heel of any modernization that's done, because, well, I know I need an environment. I don't know who to go ask because there's nobody in charge. Oh my gosh. Wouldn't it be cool if there was a system that helped that?
Yeah, and I think that the thing with COVID, that people are working potentially in different time zones, even within North America, or if you've got offshore, or just different, you're a global organization, that it's kind of changed, that people are balancing home life, maybe even access to their computers and broadband and things. So being able to use environments when it's convenient for the individual, empowering the individual to do the work when they want, where they want, is a big thing. But once we've tested it and we've used the environments, the final hurdle really is getting it into production. Managing that cutover. Even if the one thing I'd say with the mainframe, perhaps what is still to come, is separating release and deployment. There isn't a concept maybe of separating those two things, that they happen at the same time. but even if it's chronologically the same time, they're still separate activities that need to be managed. So have you got a slide relating to that as well?
Wow. Wow. Amazing how that goes. Yeah, there's a journey here that I hope everyone is kind of catching, is that there's such a feeling like, well, once it's automated, then everything's great. I don't need any more help. Yeah, it's the Steve Martin joke of how to be a millionaire. Step one, get $1 million. It's a pretty big hurdle to say just automate everything. In fact, you need to prioritize the areas that do get automated. And then not only that, it's like you got to look at the whole process to decide if that's the right thing and the right way to automate it. The essence is that modern deployment management type tooling isn't just about automation. It's about orchestrating and templatizing the runbook. In essence, orchestrating the cutover, and then having metrics and analytics and something to help make sure the right things happen are going on. This is independent of whether or not it's completely automated, completely manual, mainframe, anything else. The whole point is to homogenize all that into a single set of runbooks. And a modern kind of tool that does this helps puppeteer it all. Again, the value of having this for an operations and a release management team is that when it comes to a Saturday morning cutover, you can get off of the conference call that everybody's on and waiting for everybody to complete their task and check in. You can actually just now use tooling that's going to puppeteer people and look at those areas that are the highest risk and automate them, right? Here's the tooling. Isn't this great? We can go to BMC for the mainframe stuff and get this stuff and start to automate, create spin up environments, spin them down, back things up. Whatever we need to do, it's all available, but at least we can use data to figure out where our biggest risks are, where we need to re-architect, where we need to automate. That's fantastic. I'm sure, in fact, Stuart, you've probably seen some big successes for people automating parts of this.
Oh, absolutely. The legislation or the audit requirements of segregation of duties actually has kind of played into the automation role, that you can stop an activity until another person has electronically authorized. Then you've got that indelible forensic audit trail of who did what, when, why, etc. And that's what big organizations, that typically big organizations have mainframes. That's part of the DNA, that it's not two people working in a corner. It's often big teams. There might be two pizza teams as long as the pizzas are pretty large. But
Sure.
you need data-driven decision making. You need the collaboration. You need the information for the retrospectives if they're carried out, or if something doesn't go quite right and you get a customer query. You need that forensic audit trail to understand, not blame who did what and sack them or something, but just to understand, have you missed something in the testing cycle? And do we need to beef this up or run it in a different order? You can only do that, make those intelligent decisions, if you've got the data to allow you to see what went wrong and why.
Well, that's so. Talk about that. What are you hearing about visibility and metrics? Why are people wanting it? Why are they asking for it?
I think because they're losing with the aging workforce, they're losing some of the people that would be considered subject matter experts, and I think or I believe that I see with my children, they learn differently. They approach problems in a different way. So why do it the same way? we talked about when we were preparing for this, the THWADI acronym, THWADI. That's how we've always done it, and that's no good, isn't it? That I always encourage people who are joining workforces, just ask why. Why do we do this? And get an answer, because and we've got it in the title of our presentation today. If people can't answer with a really strong answer the why we're doing it, then maybe it's time to change. And if you've got metrics, you can make an informed decision. At BMC CompuWare, we created a service that takes some of the usage data, and then we added information from version control and tools like Jira to give some of the lightweight metrics so that people could make decisions. And then you look at what the tools like Plutora are doing, and it's that times whatever, it's on steroids, that you get the visibility or the graphical representation of what's going on. And then that gives anybody, no matter how long you've been in an organization, if you've got the numbers and you can drill down, you can highlight, I've been doing some digging, this is what I found, we need to change. And then everyone can get around that, can't they? They can look at it and say, you're absolutely right. And it's a fresh pair of eyes that was asking that, why do we do it like this? That has moved the needle more than that's how we've always done it, and that's how we'll always continue to do it.
Yeah, I love the comment you made. You said, I remember we were talking, and you were saying, one of your customers said that we're just too big to make decisions on gut feel.
Yeah,
it's like, well, of course, we're about to spend a bunch of money.
Yeah, or worse, we're about to blow a load of money, and it's not even where we wanted to go. Or we're going to polish this. Another thing I always used to talk about was polishing pebbles. So we're going to really polish this pebble when there's this dirty, great, big, horrible rock over here that's disrupting the flow, and nobody knows it's there because the metrics aren't there to identify it.
Yeah, one of the things I also find interesting here is the data. When you capture data in a transparent way, in an automatic way, it does a couple of things. One, it can automatically connect teams. Like we were talking about, when teams look to see when are things available, when are they not, there's this automatic collaboration that happens. Mm-hmm. I can already know that team over here is going to be done when, and I can know my mainframe team is going to be done here, and I can already see, because I've got a system that helps me collaborate naturally. I don't have to make a phone call. I don't have to send an email. Somebody doesn't have to respond to either of those. It's just in the system because it's collected automatically. Well, that does the second big thing, is that's faster. That's less interrupts. That's less time. That's awesome. And frankly, from an individual team point of view, I remember me as a developer, the thing I hated the most was the when are you going to be done? How's it going? The constant interrupts of like, where are you at? And it drove me nuts. And all that can be eliminated by having a natural interconnect of data that provides that visibility and collaboration.
Yep. Bringing that final outcome of efficiency. You talked a little bit about lean. That's what we're trying to do, isn't it? It's not about necessarily just improving. It's about identifying waste as well as improving things that are already good.
Absolutely. Kind of bringing this home, Plutora, we're on this webinar for a reason, to say, hey, look, mainframes are a critical part of value, of every software delivery pipeline. At some point in time, the system of engagement is going to connect with the system of record. Mainframes are really good at what they do. You can use value stream management tooling to help interconnect them all and get complete visibility over all the pipelines. That's what Plutora does. We're that value stream management platform. We're that interconnection point to bring these tools together. If you could think about, in describing our cloud-based solution, in essence, we pull data from across the pipeline, any pipeline, every pipeline, including data that's collected from mainframe software delivery. Doesn't matter. We normalize that in 2 sets of releases. We've got some key aspects of the solution that will help you manage the release process, help you manage test environments, help you manage cutover and go live, so that you can do that more efficiently. So you can use data, in essence, to direct your modernization efforts, to use, in essence, Blutora as your modernization glue between the old, the new, and all points in between, wherever you are in that journey. The key part of what Blutora really adds as cool factor then are the analytics, the comparative analytics, the insights, the audit and governance, the aspects to help you just produce and use the data to guide the decision making going forward. Now, I know that BMC's got a lot of cool tools too. You want to talk more about that?
Sure. And BMC acquired CompuWare because BMC was traditionally in the operational side of things. CompuWare was more in the dev side. So on this graphic, the infinity loop kind of comes together with the 2 companies, giving the developer experience, test automation that we've talked about, all the other bits on the bottom. But with the companies on the top, it's that open borders approach that we're not about trying to compete in all of these areas. We don't pick winners. It's about looking at the best of breed and making sure that there's an integration point. And on the left-hand side, we've got automate, integrate, and measure. And that really came out of some companies were a little bit worried that DevOps was a buzzword, and maybe they didn't want to get behind DevOps, but they could all get behind the fundamentals of automating, integrating, and fundamentally measuring what was going on. And that's what we do, really, is that where you, and BMC has non-mainframe tools too, but this is where we really wanted to focus today, because it's an awareness activity that in an enterprise, we've talked to customers that are doing lots of great things in the distributed world. They know they have a mainframe, but they just didn't know that it was just as easy to get it moving on the value stream management activity as everything else. And then if you just go to the next slide, Jeff, that I talked earlier about how to do it. The biggest question I get asked is, how do we start? And that's kind of described in that ebook there, the 10 steps to true mainframe agility. And the other thing that we can help with is a DevOps discovery workshop, where we look at the value stream in a traditional, albeit sometimes virtual these days, value stream mapping exercise, so that starts the cultural transformation, bringing people together to understand what the processes look like. And when you understand where the manual handoffs are, that gives you the opportunity to talk to companies like Blutora and say, right, we now understand what we do and why we do it. But the problem is that there's a lot of cutting and pasting, or there's a lot of Excel driving things here. That's our low-hanging fruit opportunity to automate those processes so that there aren't manual handoffs, because that's where your waste is, isn't it? If you're waiting for Stuart to come back from holiday, that's a disaster, isn't
it? Absolutely. So, key takeaways. Hey, we talked about adopting an agile and DevOps mindset, and include mainframes in that process, because you can. There's nothing stopping you. In fact, there's a benefit if you do. Like you said, if somebody's on holiday, you can improve the efficiency. And frankly, we're all about improving customer value and value delivery. There's making the pipelines mainframe inclusive from a process point of view. Easily on a process is just a looking at the steps that you go through and incorporating your process to include all that. And then ultimately use value stream tools, management tools to manage the overlay and glue all these bits together, and use the tooling, again, from BMC CompuWare to help automate those areas that need to get automated. And the combination of this will really help things move more smoothly. So there is a question here, Stuart, just to ask you if what is a common, if I have to present to my, I'm translating. If I have to present to my boss, why change here, and why invest into BMC CompuWare, or why invest into Plutora? What should I tell my boss about why?
I'm gonna use a quote that I've heard at the DevOps Enterprise Summit a couple of years ago from a chap that was from a TV company, and the basic premise is the best thing to do is change when you can afford to change, rather than trying to change when you can't afford not to change. So why is, if you don't do it now, when you see the benefits, you don't want to be waiting until something comes along that's a hard and fast event, some kind of compelling event that means you have to do it in a rush or with less controls. So if you're a visionary, you have to keep talking about being, what the vision is, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I can't give hard metrics on why, unless you want to do on a particular tool and you can do that return on investment. But if you're talking about bringing in all of the features and benefits that we've talked about today, you can do a return on investment. But otherwise, you're basically a visionary, and you have to believe that you're right, and that there are other companies that have done it. Look on the web at testimonials or white papers and things, and convince them, because it's a no-brainer for the companies that have done it and seen the benefits. And I'm sure, Jeff, you've got companies, Plutora customers, that would share their experiences on the why they did it and what they've seen on the other side. So it's a combination, really. Do some research, get us to bring in other customers that can explain, who are on the other side, why they did it and the benefits they brought. And there are hard and fast white papers that we publish of the numbers, return on investment, total economic impacts from analyst reports, etc. So kind of lots of things that can be done. Or reach out to us on LinkedIn, and if you want to chat, then I'm sure we'd either of us would jump on a call if that was the thing that would help you.
Yep. I think I've seen another way used as well. There's sort of a groundswell methodology that you can use that frankly starts with doing a value stream map, getting the entire group focused on value delivery to customers, because the efficiency and flow starts to outweigh everything else. It breaks down borders of, we used to, that's what we always did.
Absolutely.
And it really helps. I can see we're out of time.
Charlene's reappeared, so it must be ding dong.
Ding dong. Yeah. I'm sorry. I hate to break up the party, because this is such a great conversation. I have to apologize. I was actually so enamored with what you guys were talking about, I completely forgot to chat up the audience. So I apologize for that, guys. I was not ignoring you. But I do want to thank Jeff and Stuart for such a great presentation. And just a quick reminder to the audience that today's event has been recorded. So if you missed any or all of it, or if you just want to watch it again, you will have the opportunity to do so. We will be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And the webinar is also going to be on the devops.com website. So you can always go look for it there. Just go to devops.com/webinars and look in the on-demand section, and it should be right there waiting for you. Also, a quick reminder that we do have on the public chat area, we do have a link to a complimentary ebook called The Evolution of the Release Manager. Good stuff, and it is free for you to download. So make sure you do that before you close out today's webinar. Also, let's do the drawing for the 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. Our first winner today is Vanessa W. Congratulations, Vanessa. Second winner today is Peter G. Congratulations, Peter. Our third winner today is Diego G. Congratulations, Diego. And our fourth winner today is Ian M. Congratulations, Ian. And we'll be following up with all four of you by email to get your Amazon gift card over to you. So please check your inbox. And if you don't see anything there, please check your spam folder. Jeff and Stuart, great presentation. As I said before, always good stuff. And you know, I look forward to more conversations about this topic because I really do like it a lot. So thanks again, guys. I appreciate your time and your expertise.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlene.
Right. Also want to thank the audience for joining me today. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm signing off. Have a great day, everybody, and please stay safe.